On this month's episode of GroupCollect The Podcast, we sit down with Clarence Cox and Bryce Wilson of the African American Motorcoach Council, Bryce Wilson also of the GroupCollect team, of course, as well, and ask them about the AAMC's fly-in to Washington, D.C. last month, where they met with congresspeople to advocate on behalf of the bus and group travel industry. Plus, Ryan Kramer is back and we talk to him about the Stripe Conference in New York City. Kathlyn gives us the temp check on the group travel industry, and we talk GroupCollect at NTA and more. But before we get into the show, let's talk about another group travel podcast we know you'll love, and that is, of course, Gather and Go with Brian Jewell. Consider this essential listening for tour operators and travel entrepreneurs. Brian is a friend of GroupCollect and a longtime travel journalist, and in every episode he interviews travel experts and thought leaders who bring great ideas and incredible insights to travel businesses like yours. You'll learn how to level up marketing, reach new customers, plan trips new ways or to new destinations, and become more profitable in the process. So go ahead and find the Gather and Go podcast on your favorite listening app or at grouptravelleader.com/podcast. That link will also be in the show notes. But with that, let's get into your October installment of GroupCollect, the podcast. Welcome, everyone, to GroupCollect, the podcast, the only show on the internet that brings you insights from the world of group travel technology, as well as news about your favorite group travel tech company, which is, of course, GroupCollect. I am your host, Erik Young, and today I'm joined by our intrepid account manager, Kathlyn Lyles from St. Augustine, and from Weymouth, Massachusetts, making his triumphant return, it's our director of product management, Ryan Kramer, everybody. How are you guys today?
Doing good, doing good.
Lovely little Halloween week here. It's a little bit nippy down here in Florida, too.
Yeah, this is the first Halloween week in a while that I actually have to wear a jacket when the sun goes down. Not used to that.
All right. Speaking of making weather predictions, I kind of view you as like a group travel meteorologist. Now, let me tell you why. I liked our segment last month where you gave us the temp check on like the busyness / emotional pulse of the industry. Where would you say it is now? So last month, end of September. Here we are now, end of October. What is the forecast?
Moving and grooving right now.
Okay.
It is busy season for everyone. We've got almost all of the trips. If they're, student induced spring trips, almost all of the trips are in. So if not, we're trying to get those last minute trips in. And then I know the adult travel world, we've got some in the spring. I know a lot of those companies kind of put their stuff in January. So they're in their travel season now. They're finishing up, the last few trips that they have for the year. So if they're not busy sitting at the desk making sure everybody's getting registered, they're busy out and about in the world traveling with their passengers.
For sure.
So
Temperatures cooling off, business staying hot.
yes.
All right. I like that. I like that juxtaposition. And now, Ryan, I think at least part of the reason you have been out in the field, my friend, and that's been really cool. But one of the trips, I don't know if this was exactly the reason why you were not here for this segment in September, but you had gone to New York City for a conference with Stripe, the payment processor that is one of the engines that helps GroupCollect register and our other various platforms actually function. So how was the Stripe conference?
It sounds cliche, but inspiring, truly. The breadth and depth of companies that Stripe is able to support and enable is absolutely mind-blowing. And we're big fans of theirs. They're such an incredibly helpful and innovative team, and a point of pride for me. And I got to go with our CEO Corey. So something that they do, Stripe, is they have these little, pill indicators with every company for, which kind of Stripe infrastructure you use, whether you use Stripe Connect or Stripe Treasury, Stripe Issuing, all of this, and just the amount of infrastructure that we get to take advantage of in our use case, like rivals some pretty large companies there. And I think that's just a really neat thing that, even though we're a small but mighty team, we're kind of powered by the same engine that's powering, the likes of Canva, that's powering the likes of
Hmm.
Amazon itself,
These,
it's
yeah, these
pretty
really like
incredible. Yeah.
ubiquitous
Mhm.
brands.
Yeah.
Um, are you at liberty to discuss any other big takeaways that you got from the conference that pertain specifically to register or group collect ops?
Sure thing. So nothing in particular that I can say has impacted our roadmap, but the leadership at Stripe is very bullish on the idea of stablecoin and the power that it has to kind of, as the name implies, stabilize commerce in uncertain times.
Mm,
And like it feels like every tech company is, they're very bullish on AI, particularly this idea of agentic commerce, wherein when you're using an AI agent, purchase paths can be presented to you directly, within your AI chat agent. So again, nothing to read too much into there about, how it impacts our roadmap here, but I just thought it was very cool. For instance, one of their senior VPs got up on stage and on stage dictated to ChatGPT, I want to buy a purple dinosaur Halloween costume for my daughter for Halloween,
mhm.
and basically presented him with three options. He clicked the option that he wanted, and without ever leaving his ChatGPT agent, it was being shipped off to his house in San Francisco. So, cool.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So it was more sharing in these visions of the seamlessness of e-commerce and how that can continue to evolve via Stripe.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe in the year, 2035, it'll be at the point where, you type into your chat agent, oh, I want to go on a group tour to Aspen, and lo and behold, there's some group collect links that pop up there. But
Mm.
we'll see. Long ways to go with that, but it's pretty cool what the future might look like.
I
Yeah.
love far-flung predictions of
Hmm.
the tech future. That
Hmm.
it really, I mean, is there anything more futile, right? That could be 10 years from now. That could be like next year.
It,
That
it
like
could, it could be next month's newsletter, and I should not be,
for real. Like
or at
the
my
November
retirement party.
episode of this
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
No way. Don't worry, folks. We are not being replaced by robots.
No, no, no.
Okay, true, true.
No,
Let's
no agentic commerce is going to replace Kathlyn or Jason or Elise or Jenny or Julie or any of the people you love. Don't worry.
right, right. Yes, let's cool the temperatures on that as well.
Yes.
Back to you, Kathlyn. Let's yes. So that was some futurist chatter. Let's get back to the present and things that are actually happening within Group Collect Register. I wanted to touch quickly upon the monthly payout summary that we're going to be talking about in this month's video, and if you could just tell people what the origin was for that, and the timeline that we're looking to implement that into the system.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had, quite a few calls. I think a number of you are using the system for all of your trips now. So you're going back and looking at last year's numbers and just making sure, things kind of match up with your bank account. What does my favorite do? You do the checks and balances of Group Collect to your bank account there, make sure things jive. And in that, we learned that putting a total for your payouts, if you don't do a one monthly payout, which very few of you do, you either do weekly or daily, it was just helpful to see the entire total for the month because right now you have to export the each day or each week and then total them up outside of the system. So we figured, let us do the math for you to make things a lot easier and just quicker for you to compare and make sure that what you got is matching what we have in the system.
Absolutely. So, in the video for October, you'll see what our mock-ups of this will look like, and It's pretty simple. There is going to be a beautiful summation of all the payouts at that for that month at the top of the screen. So that's going to be nice. It's nice for people like me who don't care for doing a lot of arithmetic on their own.
Yes, and we're
Uh,
hoping to see that here very soon.
yeah. So, with that, Kathlyn, you've obviously been busy on the account management side of things. So Ryan and I had the privilege of just the other day being able to speak with two incredible guests. One of them, our very own Bryce Wilson from the sales and business development team, but the other, Mr. Clarence Cox of the African American Motorcoach Council, otherwise known as the AAMC, as you will hear it referred to by many times throughout this interview. But Ryan, you and I were able to sit down with these two individuals and chat with them about their recent fly-in to Washington, D.C. So without further ado, it's Bryce Wilson and Mr. Clarence Cox of the African American Motorcoach Council. So let's go ahead and jump right into things. Bryce, I think that most listeners are probably familiar with you, but let's kick things off with you. Tell us about yourself, your role with GroupCollect.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm Bryce Wilson, obviously with GroupCollect. I'm the sales and business development side of the house. But happy to be a podcast interviewee today as well. So I'll add that to my resume.
Absolutely. We always appreciate I think this is now your third time on the show, right?
I think maybe so. So I think that's more appearances than anybody else on staff. So I'm just going to put that out there just to hold that over Bud's head and maybe Sharon. So
Yeah, for sure. Yes, you are in the Hall of Fame right now as far as guests on the show. And Mr. Clarence Cox, why don't you tell us about yourself? Tell us about your role in the AAMC.
All right. First, Erik, thank you, and Ryan and Bryce and others for allowing me to show up here and be a part of this. I'm always advocating for, the travel industry. I'm a second generation owner of Georgia Coach Lines in Atlanta. My father and uncle started it about 40 years ago. And after a long law enforcement career, I took over in 2017. I've been an advocate for the motor coach industry and the travel industry as far as I can remember when my father and all started. Right now, I currently serve as a board member for the Georgia Motor Coach Association. I serve on the United Motor Coach Association's board. I'm the chairperson of the African American Motor Coach Council. I serve on the board for Travel Unity. So as you see, I bleed transportation and travel all over. So again, I'm glad to be here, and I'm always advocating for this industry.
Clarence, thank you so much for that. Would you mind telling us a little bit about, you mentioned the African American Motor Coach Council, and we're excited to talk a little bit about that organization on the podcast today. Can you talk a little bit about its origins and what it exists to do?
So a couple of years ago, when we were dealing with COVID, I was advocating for the motor coach industry pretty much with a collaborative group, but also doing some things on my own, because in my law enforcement career, I had some very strong ties with members of Congress and some senators. I once served as a national president for the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. So I had bonded with several key persons on the Hill. And as we were lobbying during COVID, I found that we didn't have the data that was needed when I was talking to these folks about giving us some type of relief. And, it just dawned on me then that that's our biggest problem, because we didn't have data. And as you know, data moves buildings, so to speak. And so then, as I was having conversations with the former executive director of ABA, Peter Pantuso, and sharing with him my frustrations with, having these conversations, but not, being able to give, empirical data, it was a problem, because everyone that I talked to, the folks that I had really good relationships, were asking, hey, Clarence, how many African Americans own motor coaches? How many do you guys employ? How does this, spread across my constituency? And I had to tell them I didn't really know. I just knew there was a great number of us that existed. and I would do a better job of trying to collect that data. So moving forward, as we were doing various talks and presenting during COVID, I started telling everybody that was doing the same thing I was doing, guys, we've got to get data. We don't have data. We don't know how much we have an impact on the travel industry. Although I'm watching African Americans who can't afford to go to Hartsfield-Jackson Airport and buy a ticket to go see their kid in college or send their kid back to college, they're riding motor coaches. And we've got to do a better job. And so since then, I'm grateful to say that we've done a good job of collecting data, sending out surveys, and trying to figure that out. And we're a lot further along than we were during COVID. So fast forward after COVID was over, and Peter transitioned out, and we have a new director. Fred Ferguson came in, and he just kind of pressed the gas, and we've got aggressive, things going on right now to try to keep up. Well, one of the other things we also noticed that some of the problems that some of my colleagues who were not African Americans were experiencing, we were all experiencing different things in different venues, so to speak. And whereas civil rights, history, and those kinds of things are very important to folks like me, that may not be such a case with other colleagues in the industry. Not to say that that's a bad thing, but we all have our different venues that we participate in and really champion, so to speak. And when I look at the number of historically Black colleges and universities that travel every week, it's very important that we have a very large standing in these communities and we make it affordable. Not only is it important that we transport folks in our community, it's got to be safe, affordable, and reliable. And so as I've been advocating in the motor coach and tourism and travel industry, I've been trying to make sure, along with a group of other folks like Bryce, is to make sure that we are very intentional in bringing the industry standards up so that we do remain affordable, reliable, and sustainable. So it's a challenge, but it's a good thing. We're enjoying it. A lot of changes. We're seeing a lot of changes, and it's all right to be in the room, but I want to be at the table. We've been in the room for a while, but we're trying to get seated at the table and stay there. So that's kind of where we are with the African American Motor Coach Council. I hear various situations around the country, which is good. And the beautiful part about this organization is it's made up with everybody: tour directors, vendors, motor coach operators, DMOs. It's not just one segment of folks. So we can hear, and it's been so encouraging and educational to hear some of the things that we never think about with operators or tour folks. It comes together in these conversations. Like a lot of the people who were preparing itineraries, they had no idea that operators could only drive a bus 10 hours and have to shut down. They prepare these itineraries that run from January to February and wouldn't think a thing about it. And now that we are talking and sharing these things and just sharing, it has just changed a lot for a lot of us. So I'm grateful to be a part of this.
Not only are you a part, but if I'm interpreting that correct, you are the founding father of the African American Motor Coach Council. Is that correct?
I am not the founding father. That was Peter's idea, and I'll love him forever for it. I'm just the first chairman of the group, and he saw my vision and my thoughts, and we shared the same vision, and that's how it was born. And thank God, when he left, Fred Ferguson came in with a more vigorous attitude toward it, and he brought in Lewis Myers, who's also a part of the council. And they both have just been really pushing. And I'm proud to say that this fly-in that we recently had was the first one for ABA and the first one for the African American Motor Coach Council.
So I definitely want to talk a little bit more about what the dynamic is between the AAMC and ABA. It's a lot of letters, but I know that there's a science that is going on between all that. But I want to ask you, Bryce. Now, We have Clarence here, who's been, one of the developers of this council, and I take it that you're one of the newer members. So can you talk about how you got involved in the AAMC?
Absolutely. Really, it was just word of mouth from some people I knew in the industry that had recommended AAMC and Clarence as well too. He's been nothing short of helpful in me and my young career, and helping me get in the right rooms and have the correct conversations with people to further our industry. So it really just started just natural connection of some mutuals that Clarence and I both knew. And as soon as I heard about it, was just super excited to be involved and a part of anything I could be involved with in this aspect. So, as Clarence kind of alluded to, this is, of course, a direct correlation with the African American community, but it's so much larger than that when we look at the industry as a whole and how we're able to just be a voice on behalf of both African American specific individuals and also, of course, the whole industry. So being a part of that is special, and I'm happy to be involved any way I can. Healthy business is good for everybody. So with the amount of interdependency that we have between different moving parts, literally and figuratively, in the industry, it's awesome to be a part of that and help all of those pieces come together to benefit everybody.
And if I could just add a piece to that, I met Bryce at NTA personally, face to face, and I told him about it, and we really talked, and we continue to connect afterwards. But to hear his side of what he's doing and to have the younger perspective, so to speak, because I'm considered an old man. So when I hear things that Bryce and others like him, like-minded people, I'm really intrigued because this is the future of our industry. So I embrace that with, open arms, because I know how it was when I first came into the industry. My father and I had two totally different ideas of how we should do business. And I was doing one thing, he was doing another, and we never really connected until almost his passing. So that taught me a lot, that I have to do better than my father did and embrace the things that Bryce brings to the table. And I'm telling you, it's always worth listening to, because not only does it come with an idea, he comes with a way to get it done, and it makes it even easier. So I'm really proud to have him as a part, and we talk often. I listen to what he has to say, and I try to help incorporate his ideas as long as, as well as mine.
Intergenerational collaboration. Imagine that. The concept is, it's alive
Something
and
that
well.
wasn't heard of before, but now it's a must. It's a needed thing. Yeah.
I agree. And I think that's just doing, well, maybe one of the factors is due in part to how quickly things are changing, right?
Yeah.
Everything in every space is moving so quickly. So I think it takes all generations working together to sometimes try and comprehend and make a plan of action. Before we jump into the next question, can you talk a little bit about what I was alluding to earlier, just the dynamic between the AAMC and ABA, and it just educate me personally. Is this council a part of the ABA?
It is. So ABA has several standalone committees as a part of the overall organization. Women in Buses, Bus Industry Safety Network. There's several of the committees that actually make up ABA. And we also have a standard a meeting of all the councils coming together to like an advisory board to Fred, from a representative from each one of the councils. We meet, monthly, sometimes a little bit further than that, to just kind of share a perspective of what the membership as a whole is asking and is needed for the organization.
Clarence, you've alluded to, it's COVID feels that the COVID pandemic feels simultaneously both so long ago and so recent, right? But the reality is, in less than a decade, in about half a decade, COVID notwithstanding, so much has changed in this country. And you've now spanned multiple different presidential administrations and Congresses and Senates. I was just wondering if you had any reflections you'd like to share about how things have changed since kind of day one with the AAMC to where we stand today, and kind of where you see things going from here.
Yes. One of the things that I think is so vital and important is we've learned to communicate better. Prior to COVID, we knew each other in the industry, colleagues kind of shared, but we had our own little circles. Now it's expanded more, and it's not just these little nucleus, these little silos, if you will, but it's grown to a larger group of people communicating. And I think that's key, because we learned that we were no longer competing against each other as much, as we thought, because we understood after COVID that there was a certain standard that we all had to meet, and we had to go together. So I think that was a learning lesson. And I look now as we deal with the tariffs. Tariffs kind of remind me a little bit of COVID. We're back in the same shape we were in, sort of, with lobbying for better, situations with our legislative leaders. And it's really weird to go to D.C. and that we were amid a shutdown. It was coming. We knew it was coming pretty much. And, doesn't matter which party you're in, Democrat or Republican, I like to use a saying that the Congressional Black Caucus used to use. I don't have any permanent friends, permanent enemies. I have permanent causes. And I think that's how it is with the industry, and particularly because, we all want to make money. One, we all want to make it affordable, reliable, and something sustainable. And if you look at how many cars we take off the road with the Motorcoach, how much savings you guys do when you collaborate and put things together for your clients. I mean, we all make up this industry, and if we don't work together, we lose. And others will come around. When you talk about autonomous vehicles and you talk about, the lifts and all these kinds of things, they could very well come in and disrupt our transportation industry in a way that would put all of us out of business. And as we look at tariffs right now, I'm predicting in 2027, motor coaches will be well over $1 million in cost. And who has bore that expense? Our customers. So if we're not doing it right and not working together to try to get it sustainable and manageable, we're going to all be out of business, because we're not going to be able to afford to be in business. And if you really look at when the motor coach industry, it's mainly made up of small mom and pop businesses. And, when majority of the industry is small businesses, whether you're black, white, or green, doesn't matter. We all have the same issues, and we all have to work together to make it over that hump. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Now, gentlemen, I am fascinated by Washington, D.C. and the mechanics of real national politics, and let's just say the operation of government, the mechanism of it. Have you found that it has been easier or more challenging to advocate on behalf of the AAMC from one administration to the other that you've been active throughout?
Honestly, yes. It varies, though. Let me say that, because we have had friends on both sides of the aisle. And, obviously when the Dems were in power, we had a little bit more horsepower because the majority of the African Americans in Congress are, Democrats. So we did have a little leverage. Now it's like when we went up the other day, it was a different feel, because, the Republicans are walking around with their chests poked out and they're happy and, life is good. Dems are looking like they want to cry in the next sentence, because they know that right now it seems like their hands are tied and they can't get anything done. And obviously, it's just a finger pointing convention right now. Everybody's pointing a finger saying it's your fault or your fault. And meanwhile, the traveling public, along with citizens of the country, are suffering. And that's what we've got to get out of. And, I'm not trying to pick any sides with anybody. I just want to make sure that we're doing the best that we can for the people at home. And we don't often see that right now. These guys are still collecting checks, and I'm listening to stories of people that can't eat. I'm listening to stories of people, can't send their kids to college, or they won't have the money to pay those bills for college right now. And that's not a good thing to be doing.
tough stories to hear, and certainly causes to be advocating on behalf of. So
It does, because if you think about it, like the president said this morning, he's not going to talk to Canada for a while, and he's imposed these new tariffs on Canada. Well, two of the major manufacturers, motor coaches, are in Canada. So as a result of that, the tariffs are trying to get a motor coach in here after that has been imposed is going to increase significantly. So now we've got to pass it on to those folks who can afford it. And I like to tell this story about Megabus. Back when we were having COVID, a lot of the companies shut down. We lost a great number of companies. And I remember those guys at Coach USA who ran Megabus in my area. They ran that till they couldn't run anymore. I mean, it was just sad. They would have 3 or 4 people on a bus, but those 3 or 4 people may have been going back to HBCU or trying to travel from one point in Georgia to New York or somewhere. And I was very grateful to them. And I shared that with their leadership team is, that you stayed in the fight as long as you could. And I understand that. And I'm appreciative because, again, a lot of folks in the community can't go out and buy a Delta Airlines or, United or an airline ticket, but they could jump on a bus, sort of like a Greyhound or something like that, and make it from one point to another. So, yeah.
I mean, I have to say it is. I salute anybody that goes into DC with advocating for those real life situations, because I don't think that many people understand what a buzzsaw that can be. So I salute you both. And with that, I want to talk about this trip that you guys went on in September, and that the AAMC participated in with this fly-in. So I would like for both of you to kind of reflect on what the goals were. Walk us through what the policy agenda was that you were talking about, and tell us about who went and how you think it went. Why don't we start with you, Bryce?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the specifics I'll leave to Clarence, because I know he's got some of the data and the advocacy notes specifically for Motorcoach owners and operators. But in general, I think first of all, it was extremely successful. I was really pleased with the turnout. I was pleased with the individuals being prepared and ready to go to orchestrate the fly-in. I think ABA did a fantastic job of getting everybody set up and kind of putting us into multiple groups so we could kind of divide and conquer there. So big shout out to Fred Ferguson, Lou Myers, Callie Hoyt also did a fantastic job as a group leader as well. So it was really awesome to see everybody come together again for, common purpose, right? So, it's like, regardless of, Democrat, Republican, whatever, there's certain things that are just bipartisan issues in general, right? And so I think it was just awesome to see people coming from all over the country for one common goal, and that is to advocate for the health of our industry. And like I said, I'll let Clarence kind of elaborate on specifically some of the items in terms of Motorcoach and how that affects his business and others like his. But, obviously being in the technology side and technology space of the travel and tourism industry, I was able to bring a perspective that was different than Motorcoach owner and operators. And then, we had Sandra from Visit Louisville is there as well too. So having, that CBB DMO presence is also a big deal to hear another voice. She had a perspective that, we didn't have. And so all that to say, all of those voices come together for that common purpose. And we're all able to kind of talk about how, policies and tariffs and things of that nature affect us all, regardless of how you feel about it. It's just a matter of fact of, what it is currently doing to the state of the industry. So I'll kind of pass that torch over to Clarence and let him talk a little bit more about the specific advocacy. I know that he was doing a great job of as well.
Well, let me tell you, that was probably, and that's not my first fly-in. I flew in also earlier in the year with UMA, and they do them annually. And it was a different field, even though I think UMA does a great job. I'm on the board there, and but it's all Motorcoach operators. And so you only get that one perspective. But this, my friends, was like, this was the home run. This was the Hank Aaron of the thing. It was just out of the park to me, because having to hear the technology side, having to hear the insurance side, we even had a couple of guys who were bankers who financed the equipment. We had, and Louisville knocked it out of the park. That actually became a mission from now on. We're going to always have a DMO with each operator because we didn't have a mechanism without her to show how much tourism dollars are lost with these things that are going on. In fact, ABC, who sells the Von Hu motor coach, sent the grandson of the guy who owns it, Clancy family, the Cornell family. And that was awesome to have that kind of power and strength with us. But, to have, it split up the way it was. And like Bryce said, you would have had to be there to just experience it because certain things that we didn't know was going on in Bryce's area, with trying to put that together. For those staffers and representatives to hear all of that, it was huge. And when we talked about the parity, we went talking about several things, but parity between the Federal Transit Association versus the motor coach. So what we talked about is most states, it's exempt. There's a law that exempts federal transit from paying tolls on, federal highway funded roads.
Mm-hmm.
Well, private motor coaches, we've been paying that all along. And there's a law that says we shouldn't pay that. We shouldn't have to pay. So if you are exempt for Georgia, for the Georgia Regional Transit Authority, then I shouldn't have to pay. We just recently in Georgia got that where it will happen. In New York, not so much. In other states, not so much. So we're trying to get them to reinforce that law to make sure that our operators, private motor coach operators, over-the-road operators don't have to pay tolls. One of the other things is the FIFA games are coming. And a lot of the FIFA folks are trying to use transit rather than use private motor coach. And that's illegal as well. The Transit Authority has to reach out to, there's a register that all motor coach private owners should sign up for. And if they're on that list, the Transit Authority in that area has to reach out to that private over-the-road motor coach service first to see if they can accommodate the charter need. And if they can't, then transit can do it. But in so many cities, transit's just going ahead and doing it without, calling local motor coach companies. And so we were fighting for that. We're talking about the fuel taxes. There's so many things, and we found we have a real good kinship with the trucking associations. In Georgia, we partnered with the local trucking association to get tort reform here in Georgia. Insurance is one of the biggest problems in the private motor coach industry. And all of those prices, those costs go back to the folks that are sitting in the seats riding the coaches. And so in order for us to keep those prices as low as we can and still make a profit, we have to make these changes in our government. And, I like to say all politics is local. I agree with that. We start locally, but, those guys in Washington are the guys who we really need to see. And I think this was just a great representation of the entire industry. And that's why I say ABA has a different perspective on the industry because they got a little bit of everybody as opposed to just a bus association. And granted, I love UMA just like I love ABA, but there's room for both.
It tells a more full story when you're trying to make a case for yourself in terms of
for the entire travel industry. We're not just talking specifically motor coaches. In fact, on our call, we have a call that Bryce participates in monthly, and we try to have the call structured that 1 month we'll talk about motor coach specific initiatives or issues, and then the next month we'll talk about something that's totally related to travel and tourism, and we'll have presentations from tourism groups and DMOs. But we learned from that because those folks who were planning those itineraries, like I said earlier, they learned a lot by hearing what our problems are and hearing that a motor coach starts about $600,000 and goes up. in cost. So then you know that these guys are just not charging you because they can. They're charging you because they want to eat too. So a lot of this has been very educational for both sides and everybody involved.
Now, I'm curious. You did you laid out a lot of the kind of specific policy agenda items that you covered with the legislators in D.C. I'm curious if either of you have any updates about any progress that might have been made since you've been in D.C. on any of these issues, or even in the absence of that, anywhere where you'd like to refer our listeners, any recommended listening, any recommended actions they could take to help kind of further these policy agenda items that you've been advocating for.
Yes, I do. We got a note last week from Congressman Matt Collins from Georgia, who was one of the people we visited, and he is introducing some legislation that will prevent people from from faking accidents. You know how people stage accidents. There's going to be some penalties associated with that so that, we can get lower tort reforms across the country rather than just in the state of Georgia. If you, in the motorcoach industry, certain states you go to, your insurance carrier will tell you that it's like, for an example, New Orleans. Every time we go to New Orleans from Georgia, we notify our carrier because they have very high torts, and it's a place where people stage a lot of accidents, and it's reflective in the premiums that most of the carriers in New Orleans have to deal with. So I was pretty pleased to hear that at least, Matt Collins from Georgia representative, he's a Republican representative here, he heard part of what we were saying, and he's very interested in helping us to give some relief on that aspect. We have encouraged the folks who attended and others continuously communicate with these folks, because once you build those relationships, it works out a whole lot better than a cold call or a cold letter or email. And so we've asked all of our membership to continuously communicate with them. If there's something going on in your community, share it with those representatives, invite them out to your various businesses, let them see personally firsthand what you're doing. And it seems to be working pretty good right now.
One step further than that, if there was anybody that was interested in membership, let's say that they are a motor coach company owner themselves or at some other point in the vertical like Bryce, and they wanted to become a part or contribute to the AAMC, is there a way that they can do that?
There is. Now, we just, when we were dealing with COVID and after, we had a lot of folks that were not ABA members, but they were participating in our calls and showing up. And we appreciate that. But in order to kind of rein it in and get it aligned the way that ABA is designed, we've sent out notices to those who have been on our calls who are not ABA members and encouraged them to participate in the membership as an ABA member, because it gives great benefits, one, but that's the only way that you can participate in the council. And the same thing happened with UMA. During the COVID months, we had what's called a UMA town hall meeting, and it was held on Thursdays and at 3:00. And we had, hundreds of people that would be on that meeting. And when COVID was over and we solved the problems and got, certs, and I'm sure that because of all of our advocacy, certs was born, and it became a real thing. When folks didn't have problems, they started weaning off the calls and they were no longer participating. And, I tell everybody, you've got to invest in your business if you want to do business. And so these membership dues are very well worth it, because you get your money back in not only the benefits from the organization, but the networking itself is priceless, because I met so many folks that I knew their names prior to, but when I actually got on calls or met them in person, it was a whole different response. You trade personal cell phone numbers and after-hour numbers with those folks because you got relationships. So I encourage everybody, especially, if you're in this business and you're real serious about it, you've got to join some sort of organization. And, there's none better than ABA and, and UMA to be a part of, especially if you're not a motor coach operator, then ABA is where you want to be. If you strictly just want to run motor coaches, then UMA may be your thing, but you got to be a part of something, or you won't survive in this industry.
So the catch-all certainly go to buses.org and research your options on membership for ABA. That's the starting point. Find your
That's it.
council, like if it's an African American Motor Coach Council, like find where your committee is, and then you can drill down on things with that. But no matter where you are in the industry, that's kind of a catch-all starting point, right?
It is. It is.
Awesome. Well, listen, we have talked about some extremely heavy topics so far. And again, I appreciate both of your time, your insight, your opinions. This has been an awesome conversation. Ryan, we wanted to wrap things up with something a little more lighthearted though, right? Let's talk about travel. At the end of the day, we're here in the travel industry, right? And travel's fun. So Ryan and I were thinking, what in each of your opinion is the best bus trip that you can take in the continental US that people might not be thinking about?
I tell you, one of the most moving, I got two, unfortunately.
Let's
I'll
go.
be greedy. I got two.
I'm here for it.
One of the most moving trips for me was the Civil Rights Trail, the Southern Civil Rights Trail, and, leaving Georgia, going over to Alabama. If you've never been to Birmingham, and Birmingham just does it way better than anybody that I've been around. Those guys got a heck of a CVB over there, and
That they do.
they've got so much to offer, and they are so happy about what they do. It's one thing to go visit a venue and you see the normal stuff, but every time I go, I see something different, and they introduce all these new things. Birmingham is kind of rebuilding, if you will, and it's a really up and coming city. The leadership there, they're trying to do things to make it a better place. But, anytime I've been on those civil rights tours, Birmingham, going over to Memphis, or Montgomery or Selma, I come back rejuvenated. So I think that's a good thing. And I'll tell you, this other one that we did that was awesome. And, I like the South, so this is kind of one of my things. But we did a tour to Nashville, and in fact, when we had an ABA convention there, we had the African American Music Museum that we visited while in Nashville, and we went to Uncle Nearest, which was a bottler for good bourbon, and we had a wonderful time there. But to go into that museum and see where music started from slavery days all the way up to today, and you got to participate in any type music you like. You could sing in a choir, or you could go make beats with the rap music. I mean, it was awesome. And I like music, but this really cool. Blues, country, anything you can think of. So those are two of my favorites.
And excellent shout outs for some of those respective organizations too. So I appreciate that. Wonderful responses. Bryce, that's tough to follow up, man. I don't know. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm going to stay in the South with this one too. So I'm
Okay.
going to kind of just follow Clarence up here. We're going to go a little bit further south to my current state of residence in Louisiana. So I did a fam trip in the state of Louisiana a couple years back, and it was just fantastic. At the time, of course, I had no clue that I'd be living in Louisiana, but I'm here now, and so. But just, I think the hospitality around the state is incredible. People are excited to welcome you in, share such a unique culture. I truly think it's the most culturally unique place in the United States. There's not really a place to replicate, specifically Southern Louisiana and Greater Acadiana areas. So best food in the United States as well, in my opinion, as well too. So if you're a foodie, you definitely got to come here. But just excellent people. Just the scenery is beautiful. So. Had an awesome fam trip down here. Had a lot of happy people, and so Shout out to Louisiana, Louisiana Office of Tourism and Louisiana Travel Association are both phenomenal entities that'll help you get connected. So that would be my shout out.
We love to hear it. Ryan, was there anything else on your mind before we wrap up the interview?
No, I'd just like to thank both of you very much for being here and for the work that you do to keep the industry rolling forward like a fantastic motor coach.
Thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure. And I'm hopeful that, your listeners will feel the need to be an advocate. We do it and we do it seamlessly because, we got the passion for it, but we can't do it by ourselves. And I just think the more the merrier, and we're doing it for each other. So if we just all kind of dive in and, it'll be good for all of us.
Absolutely. And we appreciate you guys letting listeners know what their steps could be if they are wanting to get into this role of advocate as well. So we appreciate it. Thank you both for your time today, gentlemen.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
All right, everybody. So again, that was Clarence Cox and Bryce Wilson chatting about their fly into Washington, D.C. So neat. So such a pleasure to be able to chat with them and see how that was and is impacting the group travel industry right now. Before we wrap up today, though, we had a couple more things we wanted to mention. GroupCollect is actually going to be at the NTA Travel Exchange 2025, November 9th through the 12th in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. So if you're going to that show, you can actually go to groupcollect.com/events/NTA 2025, and you can see our page about when Bud and Sharon are going to be giving presentations at the NTA Learning Lab. So go ahead and check that out. I will drop that link in the show notes. And speaking of show notes and other group travel specific podcasts, Ryan, we wanted to plug your next appearance. Talk to the listeners about that.
So our dear friend Brian Jewell, host of the Gather and Go podcast, was kind enough to have me sit down with him for an episode that's going to be released on a day to be determined in November. So keep your eye out for that. We spoke about what it's like working for GroupCollect, a company which is fully remote, and about how as more and more of our industry moves to either a hybrid or remote accessible or remote first culture, what works for us, what lessons we've learned, and I found it to be a great conversation because I don't know about you two, I feel like we are an extremely connected team, even though we are currently sitting in 3 different cities as we make this recording here, and I'm happy to kind of share some of my thoughts about how we make that happen.
That's a good point. Kathlyn, were you remote before COVID? No?
I was in an office.
Interesting. I've basically not gone into an office since 2013.
The world is your office.
It's like, yeah, I don't even understand an alternative anymore at this point. It's like, this is work. Like, what do you mean? Like people go places?
Our generation, I feel like especially is the work from home is becoming the normal.
Right. And I like to think about like when our kids grow up and they're entering the workforce, there's going like the new innovative workplace strategy is going to be like, yo, how crazy would it be if we all went to one building and worked in the same place?
Yes. Sharon did make a point.
What?
Yeah, Sharon made a point the other day that like Tegan grows up with both, my husband and I both work from home, and that's what she knows. So like, yes, that idea of everybody goes to like the same place to work.
It's gonna be a cool and groundbreaking idea in 15 years. Watch out.
Yeah, but they're gonna have these super fancy electronic touch screen everything. Like, you look at it and it does something high tech places to go to.
True.
So.
Probably gonna be AI generated.
They'll have robots at the door greeting them.
Stripe will be selling you something on the other side. We revere our partners, Stripe, and we want to say thanks as always for listening to GroupCollect the podcast. Find this show if you have not already anywhere that you like podcasts, but specifically Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and of course if you have any thoughts or feedback on anything discussed, email me directly, Erik, ERIK, @groupcollect.com. And until next month, on behalf of my co-hosts, I would like to say this is your reminder to stay cool and collecting. This has been a GroupCollect production.